everyone, welcome back again to another exciting episode of the iConis podcast. Remember, like, subscribe, and share. I am one of your hosts, Barry 3D, and on my side, the man, the myth, the legend, the one that's got me dancing all night long, the one and only
DJ Rod C. Good day to everyone. Hope you are having a good time out there. Listen, we're going to have something very special for you. We're going to end off this month. We're going to end off with this particular title. We're going to be talking about Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos. What's that? We're going to get into that. But first, man, let's make it the man. We got someone we got to introduce. Barry, who do we got to introduce?
Very simple. We got our other brother here from across the pond. No, not across the pond, but across the border. Here we go. Our man, a new brother with us, and he grows on us so much. Fans love him. We love him. The one and only Mr. Larry Reclazado. Hey, Larry, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, guys. What's going on?
As always, Larry never disappoints us.
Never.
He came dressed for the Creature Commandos. We know who he's rooting for. So, as Rod said, manners make the man. We go do this. We go do this. Quick, here we go. So we can get into the subject. So first and foremost, if anyone wants to know where you can find me on my website, which is barry3d.com. Once again, that's barry3d.com. It has all the links to all the comedy shows I do, along with anything dealing with the iConis podcast. So that's first and foremost. Also, keep in mind that we are part of the Subculture Podcast Network. So it's our show, the iConis Podcast, along with Rebel Rock Radio, Dork Wars, Portable Hole, Entertainment Rants, and Trekker's Delight. Of course, now we have Larry on. You've heard us mention it before. Larry is the man who's put together the page on Facebook, which is Forgotten, Obscure, and Underrated Heroes. So remember, please join the page, be respectable, and it's all about fun and sharing the knowledge, just like this show is all about. So, respect the guidelines or you'll get an X. Okay? Then on top of it, we use Podbean. So if you want to find and have any hosting, we use podbean.com to host all our audio episodes. So you can go to iconis.podbean.com to find any of our past shows and take them on the road with you. And on top of that, oh, yes, you got to support the books. So you got to support the books by going to the comic book stores and doing all that. That gives us all this entertainment stuff to talk about. So support the books. The two of the shows that are behind us right now, or stores that are behind us, is WoW Comics out in Kitchener, and of course, Chex Wings out in Montreal. So, go to the respective, tell either Wes or Trevor that you heard about them on the iConis podcast. Awesome. Rod, where can we find you?
You know what you mean. You can find me, as I say, on the World Wide Web. You can find me on Instagram. Reach out at Instagram at Mr. Rod C. You can find me on twitch.tv/DJ Rod C. You can find me on the world of TikTok at DJ Rod C1. That's DJ Rod C1. I got another one that I'm just working on, trying to build it from there. I'll let you guys know what that one is shortly. Let's go.
All right. Oh, Shay. Well, I'm glad to hear that. As I said, I mentioned Larry's page here, and he's slicking back the Wolfman here. We'll let Larry take this away in half a second. And remember, if you need a graphic artist to do any type of work, regardless of what it is, from live to special events to online, we got you covered. There's only one man and one man you should turn to alone, and that man is
J Bird Digital Art.
Mr. Jason Reese, J Bird Digital Arts. You tell him you heard about him on the iConis podcast, and he will give you a discount on the work. Okay, Now before we go any further, one last important message. We have Remembrance Day, but we like to extend it and call it Remembrance Month, and we dedicate all these shows to the troops that help us have our freedoms that we have today. So put aside all differences and know that people go out there and sacrifice what they need to do to keep us as free as possible. So we want to say, one, thank you. These shows are for you, and we've done it last year. We did it this year, and we're going to keep on doing it first and foremost. So that is a main thing. Larry, any words to add on to that before we jump into it?
Well, just so you guys know, I mean, we're similar down here. On the 11th, we have Veterans Day. That's for everybody, whether you're alive or dead. And on the 10th, something dear to my heart, it was the birthday of the Marine Corps, which I served in. So.
That is amazing. So, you know what? One, thank you for your service once again, sir. And, and said, this is for everybody, but this is like, our special theme for the troops, because there's so many of them out there. So hopefully, they'll get more than just having G.I. Joe and realizing there's a lot more in there that's supporting them. So on the iConis podcast, the icon is the Creature Commandos.
Mm.
So much, so little. And I got to throw a curveball for half a second. In all these ones we've done over the years, so far to date, there's more offers to come. I'm always amazed how DC seems to do a lot more of these war story books than Marvel. But and why I don't know. But here we are. Marvel's done some, but Marvel's done like the only realistic one I think we covered so far was the Nam, and then all the other ones are ones we haven't covered yet. But it's more futuristic or more in that superhero genre than a true military thing. And I'm talking outside of GI Joe. So yes, I know Marvel had GI Joe, but before Marvel had GI Joe, DC had GI Joe.
That's true.
Put that in your cap.
Yeah. But
all
Marvel
right, Larry
did have Sergeant Fury and Allen Commandos.
Yes, but didn't Sergeant Fury come out after Sergeant Rock?
They were about the same time in the 60s.
Yeah, about the 60s, but I think Sergeant Rock made his appearance first, and then it was Sergeant. I remember, go back to our Sergeant Rock.
I think by a few months.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was very close.
Exactly. It was like, oh, you got him? Well, we got him. It's just now what they've done with him, that one is one has evolved to the present day, and the other one, it was still around. They ended his story, but yeah. So it's Marvel and DC. So we're getting into the Creature Commandos. I've been looking forward to this, and I always look forward to having you on the show here, Larry. So
this was my favorite. This was my favorite comic in high school.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Nice.
All right then. Well, let's take us away with some notes. I know I just have the general notes, Larry, and I'll let you do the rest. Also, the general notes I have here is obviously mentioned. Creature Commandos came out by DC Comics, and they made the team made their first appearance in Weird War Tales, issue number 93, issue number 93, November of 1980, and it was created by J.M. DeMatteis, who was the writer, and Pat Broderick, who was the artist. But of course, as we said in a lot of these books, at one point it was taken over by our man Robert. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his last name. He's done like every war book there is. Like he was behind GI Robot for half a second. So Robert Kinninger. So Robert seems like to be their main go-to. But there we go. That's where it started off. So they didn't really have their own per se standalone book when they first came out. But it does evolve in that later on. But Larry, take it away, sir.
All right, so we'll talk a bit about Weird War Tales before they got into the Creature Commandos. Mainly, they were doing different things. The easiest way to relate it is if you ever saw the Heavy Metal movie, there's one scene where they crash on an island. You got all these like skeletons and so on come to life. And that's the kind of stories that Weird War Tales was. Okay, so you had horror and war. Although war is its own type of horror, believe me, I've been there. But in issue 93, they brought out the first iteration of the Creature Commandos. Now, this was all about a thing that we were calling Project M. No, that's not for Monster. That's actually for the Professor Mazursky, who was the one who basically designed everybody in it. He not only did that, he also was very instrumental in the creation of both the Marvel version of Miss America and G.I. Robot, with the help of Robert Crane, the original Robot Man.
Interesting. Because we just covered G.I. Robot before. It's so it just came out the week before last week, and I missed that the Robot Man connection. I should have caught that, but sorry, go on. All right.
So in 1942, Project M creates Creature Commandos. This was a group. First, there was Lieutenant Matthew Shreve. He didn't want to join the group, but he got put in charge of it. He's just a normal human. Then we have Warren Griffin, young farm boy, more or less, and he basically was turned into a werewolf. Now, these are all basically scientifically done as opposed to supernaturally done. And all right. Then we have Sergeant Vincent Velcro, who was going to get kicked out of the Army, and he ended up volunteering for and they basically made him into a vampire. And finally, Private Elliot Lucky Taylor, who got hit by shrapnel and a grenade, saving his buddies, which basically, when they put him back together, he was like a Frankenstein monster.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you just got that's the original three. In their first mission, they end up going out and dealing with some Nazis. Of course, that's pretty much their whole thing to start with. And then they that mission goes okay. They basically knock over a Nazi death camp. Then their second mission, going after another death camp, was going to France and freeing a Dr. René Frederic. I think that's the correct pronunciation. She designed a chemical nerve gas. They basically end up having to kill her because, well, it's either that or the Nazis get the information on the nerve gas.
Yeah.
So yeah, it can get pretty intense with these stories. And sometimes they had to do things that you would think were not exactly that great, but it's war.
Very true. And I'll say this for half a second. So I know, for example, that, you know, they kind of used certain things to accentuate the thing. So with Warren Griffin, you know, I know he had a luprancy. Forget my pronunciation. So he in his mind, he had that mental condition where he thought he was turning into a werewolf. So they used that to add to the whole mystique of actually making him become a werewolf.
Correct.
Turning him into that. You know, so it kind of played on a lot of the mental, like, I guess how they saw themselves, or things they experimented for to join the war. Now, you know, any of the war buffs out there, any of the people that are they either experienced it live, unfortunately, you know, or the war buffs or the history, you have to. What I thought was a little bit of a missed opportunity is they covered a lot of, you know, the psychological part. This is why I liked, you know, this first iteration of the Creature Commandos. It reminded me of, you know, I used to watch Drac Pack, and we covered that on the show when I was a kid. And it seemed like, you know, the serious version of Drac Pack, how it should be, right? Take away the magic. Okay, it's all now by the government, you know, secret projects. And let's not forget that, you know, during World War II, Hitler did have his own thing. Yes, did he have a straightforward army? But then, of course, there was always rumors that he was always looking for these objects of power. Let's put it this way. They touched on it.
Got several books on the Nazis and the occult.
Exactly. Thank you. They touched on that in movies like Indiana Jones, you know, war buffs. So this does, you know, it might seem far-fetched when you look at it as a comic book for half a second, but if you really think of it in the context of what was happening during World War II, it does make sense. If one side's going to do it, the other side's going to try to do it too, to either have the advantage or counteract them some way, right? So this, to me, was very psychological. If you're out there in the middle of the night in a foreign country, dimly lit, walking through the bush, and you're hearing noises, first of all, you're already on hide and alert. You're going to be more spooked. And then if you see things that you know shouldn't be real, but for real, you're encountering them, like, people don't think, oh yeah, I'm going to turn, you know, walk out my house, go down 2 blocks and run into a vampire or a werewolf. You know, you might have that fear in the back of your head. You might entertain it, but then you have like reason saying, no, I can't do it. And then when you're out in the jungle, you're out in the bush, you're in a strange land, and you're hearing certain things. It's not your neighborhood or the land you live in, and all of a sudden you hear it. You're like, no, can't be. And then you see it. The psychological impact, it's going to make you freeze, hesitate, panic. You're not going to be as effective as a soldier to counter that. If you're out there, it doesn't matter. I don't care how cool you think you are, how tough you think you are. If you see something as a common man mind flying in the air and you realize it's another person or it's a bat, and then you see him transform into a person, you're going to be like, am I dreaming? And by the time they hit you, you're like, no, I'm not.
Right. Yeah, that's the first thing they said is when they held a generals meeting in the beginning of the story is we feel that it's psychologically going to screw with these people and make them afraid of things that the movies are showing them at this time. So, yeah. But now, after they get into their first few missions, Then they end up going to Dinosaur Island.
Right.
And the War of the Time Forgot. And somebody you just covered joins the team.
Yes.
The first GI robot.
GI robot. Yes. Exactly. Now, we know he doesn't talk. We know, and we did a whole episode on GI Robot with, Monster Island and saying, hey, what came about first? Was it Monster Island or was it a Savage Land? And we did go through our whole thing about it. So hopefully people found that interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But we're taking it really from the roots of it. But once again, now you got Monster Island, we got GI Robot. In the first one, they joins the team with the Creature Commandos. They go back there. So there's a lure. There's something that's drawing them there, but I digress. There you go. All right, Larry, sorry.
All right. So they have a few more adventures, and then they have the last member to join the team in World War II. Mm-hmm. Dr. Mira Rhodes, or sometimes called Myrna, because, sometimes these writers just can't remember names.
Don't worry, neither can I, so I'm good.
Well, that's why Stan Lee did all that alliteration, like Peter Parker and Bruce Banner, so that he'd remember the names.
Right. Smart.
Yep. She inhales some weird fumes while working as a scientist, and she ends up growing living snakes in her hair, resembling Medusa. And yes, she gets the Gorgon powers of turning people to stone.
Yep.
So
I remember when she came about because she always had to keep her hair wrapped up, and you're like, okay, what's going on here? And then she take it off and turn people to stone, and of course the snakes bite.
Yep. So that's pretty much the team. Oh, and by the way, the only problem is that first GI robot, Jaguan, does sacrifice himself for the team, which is why we get multiple GI robots later on.
Right.
Yes. So that is cool that, they brought in GI Robot to join the team. And then that's the other aspect of it is when you read the book, it's, it's got the horror aspect.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, what is the horror aspect? And what I mean by that is, yes, they look like, Frankenstein's monster, vampire, werewolf, Medusa, a robot man. Okay. And that's kind of, whoa, right? They don't look human. But you realize, in my opinion, when you're going through the book, that the monsters aren't the creature commandos. The monsters are the superior officers and the people that they engage with and treat them. Because they look less human, they treat them less than human. They automatically assume for them to do the exact words. It's like, well, I wouldn't do this to a fellow human, but you guys are just monsters, so you don't feel no way about it. Forgetting that they all were derived from human beings before they changed into what they changed into.
Oh, there's a serious storyline throughout the whole thing with Lieutenant Shreve and Sergeant Velcro. And at one point, Lieutenant Shreve does something that's, I'd say, almost a war crime. And Velcro goes off on him. And he tells him, if I ever catch you doing that again, I am going to bite you.
Right. Fight and drain. That's how he had to stay alive, by draining blood. So it was, it's a lot of layers. Like, I mean, if you look at it real quick, it's like, okay, monsters in a war made by comic. Okay, fine, a superhero thing. And if people kind of take that approach to it, you are so missing the layers and the great story writing that was a part of that. So hopefully, we know James Gunn's got the Creature Commando cartoon coming out. Hopefully, he hits those layers properly going forward to show that it's more than just, monsters going bump in the night.
Yep. And then we get to the end of the war. And at the end of the war, GI Robot 2, Jake 2, joins along with his robot dog, Cap.
Yep.
So, but then the series ends in 1983, and we have to wait until 2000 before we get to the next iteration of the Creature Commandos.
Right. All right. So let me stop you there. So before we go any further, so Rod, did you check out any of the Creature Commando books or anything? Or were you aware of Creature Commandos at the time?
Not. I think I might have heard it in passing in years ago type of scenario. Definitely when you're hearing that James Gunn is bringing his variation to it. It did kind of like spark the remembrance. Like, I do remember hearing about it. So again, because of today's episode, went did looking into and everything like that. So it's the great aspect of let's just say this straight. For the weird war tales, that initially starts it off. Like when you write it, when I check out the notes and everything along that line, when the Matthias, when he joined that team, to write on it, he was saying, you're doing a lot of war tales stories, and basically it's supposed to be weird war. So, in his mind, kind of saying, where are the monsters? Where are the occult aspect of it? So it's a nice twitch to kind of bring in. And as you can see, like you said, if you think about it, it's a rendition of Frankenstein, werewolf, and Dracula. All was really missing per se was like the mummy. You know what I mean? And you're going with the basic known horror of that time or earlier,
Right.
characters. Everybody would always, if you think about horror, especially in that time frame, if you think, for anybody reading it or writing it, for them, it would have been earlier time frame, like mid-20s and 30s type of stuff, World War II stories about Frankenstein, the Wolfman and Dracula was very common. So it was a great idea of kind of taking that lore and trying to infuse it into a World War type of environment, into an army, into a fighting type of regiment. And like Larry was saying, that when they started, the commanding officers, the higher ups were kind of like taken back from it, but they realized that, what, it turned into like an early rendition of Batman, or Batman as well, like, what strikes fear into people's hearts, bats and that kind of scenario, bump in the night, but like the shadow,
Yes.
what lurks in the heart of man, only the shadow knows, darkness. So you're just scaring people from that aspect. So I look at it that it's funny that they were able to take that type of lore, infuse it into the comics, but into a war type environment, and just say, well, you know what would look nice if we did have a band of monsters that we were able to control, and just kind of like point in that direction and say, go there, fight, I'll meet you on the other side. And basically, like, it's perfect. So when you start to find out certain things, like one thing I like about it, that they kind of kept everything as close as possible to the original lore, like Frankenstein, Lucky, like you guys are saying, he was in an accident, basically stepped on a landmine type of scenario. They basically did a Humpty Dumpty, try to put him back together again. Fortunately, they forgot to put his vocal cords, so he doesn't talk. So now you're getting the lore of, not only does he look like Frankenstein, but I also have the characteristic that Frankenstein really never talked, because, his vocal cords, his larynx wasn't there. So, oh, okay, Frankie, what do you want to say? Or this time, really, Lucky, what are you trying to tell us? Like, oh, Lucky doesn't like this. Lucky's taking people by the head. And like, oh, Lucky, don't kill him, Lucky. I know you're trying to tell me something. Don't get crazy now. Because it's the only way he can communicate, by his hands. Early sign languages.
5 across the eyes. Yeah. And when you read it, Lucky as Frankenstein's monster was the most, in my opinion, humane one. Like the rest 100%. Of them really gave into their personas that they took on, and he still had his human spirit, for lack of a better word, that he kept the rest of the team in line. So the rest of them were going to go in a little bit of berserker mode, a killing spree. He would stop them outside of Medusa, and him and Medusa. And I say Medusa, they had a relationship. She saw that kindness in him. So she saw past the patchwork of what his body was, and even humanized him even more. So the one who was the most grotesque, the one who looked the furthest from human, was the most humane person on the team. Right. So, on one of their earlier missions, they got into an island to one of the death camps. They're trying to free the hostages, and they realized there's a whole bunch of androids that were made that were looking like the leaders at the time. So they had to stop that whole plot. So they've gotten into some interesting stuff. And before we go on a bit more, I'm going to just call out some things. So one thing I made, and I thought it was interesting. So I know for anyone that's wondering and wants to read more about the Creature Commandos, I say, yes, go ahead and do it. There is trade paperback out there. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or eBay or wherever you, or better yet, just go to a comic book store. Just go to a comic book store and get the issues or get the trade paperbacks. And I'll call out this. So I know a lot of the Creature Commandos, the first iteration that we're talking about, you can see a lot of their tales in Weird War Tales And there were in issues, for example, 93, 97, 100, 102, 105, and then from 108 to 112 was another storyline, and then from 114 to 119, then issue 121, and then of course lasting in 124.
Right.
So they didn't have a lot of issues per se on this team. It was broken up, and for this team, their last mission, it was almost a feel-good story, and of course, then it's always about what next. So the feel-good story is they did a mission, they all came back, it seemed like it was good, and then they had the famous prologue. And in this prologue, this team was taken aside, including their commanding officer, who was human.
Yeah, I was about to say, you forgot to mention that, yeah.
Yeah. They were all put up to the stake for disobeying orders for one particular mission, even though it seemed like everything was going to work out fine. They were going to be put to a firing squad. And then, lo and behold, a commander comes in last minute on the Jeep saying, don't shoot. We've got new orders. They're not going to be part of the firing squad. We have one last mission for the creature commandos. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, great. And it's really all in one page just happens. And they say, well, we have a ballistic missile that's going to go over to Berlin. And we want the creature commandos, experimental. We want the creature commandos to get on there and fly this missile rocket ship over there to Berlin. And of course, deal with Hitler. They had to take that instead of the death sentence because at least they have a slim chance. They all go on the robot. The robot. They all go onto the missile. All of them, including the robot cat. The missile goes up from remote, from mission control. Like, oh, good launch. Oh, wait a minute. They've lost control. Well, it's off course. It's not going to Berlin. It's now in outer space. What happened to them? We don't know. And that's how they ended their story. They just shot him in outer space.
Yeah.
Done. Right? Like, that's all we knew at that time until years later. Or I know, Larry, you're about to pick up, but I thought that was really bittersweet on how these, mismatched heroes, like, I mean, it's either you die or you take this kind of suicide mission. Like, that shows you who the monsters were, and off they go. So you're rooting for them, and then that's how they leave you on a cliffhanger, and you're like, oh, there'll be another issue?
Nope.
No.
7 years before you see him again.
How many? 7 years?
Yep.
Wow. So 7 years they're in comic book limbo until someone goes back and takes another run at the book. All right. Sorry, Larry. I just wanted to kind of put that out there because I thought it was really interesting how they just wrapped them up, unfortunately, in a way, yes and no.
Yeah. Now, of course, the other thing, going back real quick about Lucky, he actually could talk in the first issue, but he's so sensitive and everything. He was so, by what he looked like and fact that he tried to kill himself by slitting his throat.
Oh.
And that's why he couldn't talk, and they wouldn't let him die.
They invested too much into him, so of course not. I get that.
Which shows you how much of a monster the government was.
Right. But see, now that's still back then, that was dealing with mental health. That's dealing with post-traumatic stress, be it if it wasn't named in the book. Deep writing, man.
Yeah. Yep. All right. So in 2000, we get the original team, which has arrived onto Brainiac's ship. And they've been stuck on Brainiac's ship for a while, and it was under the control of the Kandorians at that time. If you know the Kandorians, we are talking about Starfire and her family.
Yeah.
Yes. But they end up with Superman on it. With the villains at that time in that issue were Reactron and Metallo. But they managed to team up with Superman. They get convinced by the Frankenstein that's there, which is not Lucky, that to trust Superman and work with him. And they end up getting back to Earth. At that point, they decide to take some hero names. And you don't get them very much, but they codename the team M-Team Alpha.
Right.
And a few others join. Now, at this time, Shreve had died. We think. May have retired, but he's gone.
Mhm.
All right. And they pick up Lieutenant Lucius Hunter as a leader. Now, there was a short-lived series called Hunter's Hellcats.
Right? Yes.
And that's who Lieutenant Hunter is. And he's about 74 years of age, but he's been modified kind of like Nick Fury with various chemicals and so forth. So live extend the lifespan. Um, and then a few other members join in. These include a 10, a mummy, and who is their communication specialist, and a bogman, who is an amphibian resembling the gillman, which the gillman is the actual name of the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Mm.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And a recently revived Gunner McKay. Now, there was a series called Gunner and Sarge back in Our Fighting Forces.
Okay, yeah.
And
Remember hearing the names?
right? So Gunner comes back as a cyborg and joins the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a few adventures, including they had a short-lived series of their own. Then the various places they popped up. The OMAC Project
Okay, yeah.
in 2005. Infinite Crisis Villains United Special, which deals with the Enclave M and the New Mexico prison. And then Booster Gold, where Maxwell Lord gets a hold of them. And the final place they come up is Justice League Generation Lost, in which Maxwell Lord uses them to attack the JLI embassy.
Wow. Okay, so I missed that part of the story. Okay.
And then we don't see anything else until the New 52.
Right.
Okay.
So we want to
So
talk about
that
that,
gap
or
there
what?
that you just mentioned, I saw the books come out, but I never really got more into it because I liked them with how they were originally portrayed. So, I saw the books, but I didn't really read it, the series at that time. And then, the New 52, right. I saw him show up, and at the time, my brother was buying Frankenstein, Agent of Shade. So I just want to kind of peek back into it a bit.
So, jumping back into the New 52, of course, everything got revamped. We lose Lucky. Hasn't shown back up yet. And they make a few changes. In this version, Frankenstein is an agent of Shade. This is kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D., but dealing with supernatural things for DC. Now, Shade. Let me just do a quick look here. Which is short for Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive. Yeah, don't we just love our acronyms?
Of course, between DC and DC and Marvel, they love their acronyms. Everything's got to equal or mean something, from Shade down to Mask, the TV show. Okay, so we
So with that, we get a few various things that are a little odd but interesting. First thing, we have very small, almost microscopic headquarters. Why? Because one of their lead scientists is Ray Palmer, who we know as the Atom. Although he isn't the Atom at that point with the New 52. He's just a scientist and studying how to shrink things. Frankenstein is the head of the field unit, and a character from back in the day called Father Time is the executive director. Now, Father Time reincarnates every millennium. So it goes from this old man to this little girl with all the knowledge of an immortal.
It's a Doctor
From the
Who
beginning of
movement. There
time.
you go. It's a
Yeah.
Doctor Who movement. There you go.
Yeah,
Kind
Doctor
of,
Who,
yeah.
Jenny Sparks from The Authority. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we got the Frankenstein creature leading the group. We've got his bride, who pretty much hates him. You later on find out why, because of the fate of their son.
Mm.
Yes. The one thing Dr. Frankenstein was afraid of was them breeding.
Right.
So, now the
I
new
didn't know
team consists of Khalees, who is a actual Egyptian mummy, Warren Griffith, a werewolf. So Warren's back. They changed the name of Vincent from Velcro to Velcoro for some reason. And him and Warren were both mutated by a modification of the Man-Bat formula. So a little different origins. And the final member is Dr. Nina Mazursky, the daughter of the original professor, who turns herself into an amphibious creature, resembling a cross between the gill man and a mermaid. Which means when she's out of the water, she has to wear a helmet full of water. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's pretty much where we ended until when we get to the new cartoon.
Right. So I think, like, first of all, I like the whole Creature Commandos thing. I like the whole presence of it. I'll get into that with future thoughts. But it's an interesting theme that they put together, and it's simple concept. War, monster, horror comics. And if you look back over the years, so if you're thinking back to the 60s, 50s and 60s, Warner Brothers had a whole run of all the monster movies back then.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led up to it. So you'd get Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Werewolf. And then at one point it became like serials that would come out of all these, the Creature of the Black Lagoon. And then it's like, oh, the werewolf meets Dracula, or Dracula versus the werewolf, So they did kind of keep on that theme. And I know for us in this day and age, it might not be so in the forefront, but back in the 50s and 60s, that was it. You would go out there and you get your horror comics. You would go out there and get your statues or toy figures that represented it. And those were like the high price point items back then. Like, I mean, there was so much in demand.
I had the models.
You had the models, right? And I remember the model kits being out. I never picked up one of the model kits, but the models were out. They had models, they had figures, they had books, they were everywhere. That was it. Like, they made Warner Brothers a lot of money. Like, as I like to say, bucks.
Yeah, Universal first. They're back at Universal now.
Right.
Warner Brothers got them for a while. Hammer got them for a while. A lot of them are in public domain.
Right.
Because Dracula and Frankenstein are public domain. The Wolfman's not, but, I did forget one thing. There was a short, because it was very short, Flashpoint group.
Yes.
And that, of course, that had the original group who basically more or less died in Romania on a mission. And then they had a second group of commandos basically being Solomon Grundy, Man-Bat, and Dr. Phosphorus.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting because of the cartoon. We'll find out who might join from that group.
I'm looking for it. I mean, I've seen the pictures, I've seen the trailers. So interesting to see how they're going to play it out. I have my hopes and dreams, so to speak, but we can always go from there.
Yeah. Let me see.
Now, I also know they made some appearances before. They were in the cartoon with Batman, Brave and the Bold. They had an appearance. I think they showed up twice in the Brave and the Bold cartoon, and that was a cool thing with the Brave and the Bold cartoon. Regardless, at first when I looked at the cartoon, I thought maybe it was a little bit jokey, that particular run with Batman, and the animation was, I guess, kind of resembling that. But on the other side, We got a ton of, just like the comic book Brave and Bold with Batman, we got tons of crossovers with multiple DC properties that never really saw the light of day. So they did have that. They did have like a 3 mini backup feature, the Creature Commandos and other things that showed up, because they were trying to pilot a series just on them. And then, and of course, they had to offset, I guess, some of the monster aspect with a little bit of humor. So at one point, you got Frankenstein's monster. He turns around, he has no voice, but then they find him a voice box, but it's a voice box of a woman. So you got this big hulking guy, and he's got this high pitched voice, like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, I call it the Mike Tyson syndrome. So,
well,
right. So they did kind of show
a few of the places they appeared on television. Of course, you said The Brave and the Bold,
right,
which was actually in an episode called The War That Time Forgot, just like what was in Weird War Tales.
Exactly.
Then we had a short from DC Nation. And that was actually pretty good. And then we actually had Lieutenant Shreve appear in an episode of Arrow.
Oh, okay.
In the 3rd season, portrayed by Mark Singer, the Beastmaster.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And finally, we have the new series coming out. So let's just talk about that real quick for a moment.
Sure.
We have General Rick Flag Sr. in it. Which if they tied into the DC universe, which I don't think, entertainment universe, which I don't think they're going to.
No, it's not the same. It's not
I know,
the same.
but the thing is, because you have Peacemaker, he's kind of crossing the group. And that may mean Rick Flag Jr. is still dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the person that got playing Rick Senior, he's not old enough to be a senior.
Well, Frank Grillo.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Captain America is like how old is Captain America, right? So
that's Cap, super serum and stuff.
Right.
Like that.
And I mean, we have Lieutenant Hunter, who had the Eternity formula, just like you have over in Marvel with Sergeant Fury.
Yes.
So you have those two things.
It could be explained that way. We'll see how they turn around.
We'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that back.
So I don't know. We have Eric Frankenstein. So the Frankenstein monster takes a name in this one. And let's be honest, Frankenstein monster is not the monster. Dr. Frankenstein's the monster.
Exactly.
But, the Bride.
So
again, Nina Mazursky. So we have our Gill person. G.I. Robot. And Dr. Phosphorus. And the Weasel.
The Weasel.
Oh, the Weasel? Okay.
Yeah, which you saw in the last Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah.
And finally, we get a name for the group because it's done by Amanda Waller. So instead of Task Force X, the Suicide Squad, we have Task Force M.
Right.
So Easter egg there. So it's got a kind of an Easter egg. And I mean, I like that they're actually doing the callbacks, and I'll see how it plays out. It looks like they're going to have like 7 episodes coming out very shortly altogether. I mean, there's no names or anything like that for it. I just see it's supposed to be 7 episodes. So I don't know the length of the episodes. Don't know, I'm assuming there'll probably be maybe half-an-hour episodes at tops, give or take.
Likely.
Right, exactly. The first one's supposed to drop December 5th. So the first 2 seem to be dropping December 5th. Yeah, the cartoon I'm talking, right? Yes.
Yeah, first 2, yeah.
Yeah, so the first 2 will be dropping December 5th, and then after that it'll be weekly, on December 12th, 19th, 26th, then January 2nd, and the last one on January 9th. So we'll see what his storyline's going to do and how he's going to wrap these up. If he's going to portray it that, to me, is that darker, gritty as the comic book, is he going to lighten it up? He doesn't overlighten it.
The trailer's pretty good. I know that.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
The premise, I was just checking up. I found out the premise is basically Amanda Waller is, in a nice way of saying, she's getting pushed back for putting, people's lives in jeopardy, with Suicide Squad and Team Peacemaker. So now she's able to assemble basically, as I say, a Black Ops team of monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically the premise. So now you're still going to see Amanda in charge, but she's now, instead of having Suicide Squad, Task Force X, in that regard, Team Peacemaker, okay, we're going to have monsters and, we're going to lead with monsters. So no humans' lives will be in jeopardy. That's what they're trying to go with. Okay, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So,
but wouldn't Rick Flag be part of the human team? If you're not allowed humans, Rick is still there. Ain't he human?
Yeah.
I think by default, you just messed up the whole vision right there of government. You don't want to put human lives in jeopardy, but you still got Rick leading.
Well, I mean,
Don't tell me lies.
I mean, let's see. I mean, technically, you've got Nina. I mean, yeah, she's turned herself into a amphibious creature, but
right, unfortunately,
still,
yep.
Yeah,
but she turns into that, so unfortunately, you're half human.
Yeah.
So we'll just lean on the monster side of that. Sorry,
Yeah.
You're allowed to pass. Cool, no problem. Weasel, well, we know the Weasel. You passed. Rick, we'll get back to you on that one. You just work from, you just, command from the back.
Well,
that's how we can safeguard
anyway.
you. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. The people who do the work are sergeants and below. There's a reason why I say. There's a reason I say I hate brass. And
I
anybody,
get that.
There's a reason anybody calls me sir. It's like, hey, I work for a living. Don't call me sir.
Shame. And action.
Anyway, so yeah, we got Rick Flag, who's a human. We also got Dr. Phosphorus, played by Alan Tudyk. And basically, Dr. Phosphorus is still a human. He just has the power to turn himself into a flaming skeleton.
Yeah, monster.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that's like saying Superman's not human.
Monster.
Well,
If
Depends on whose point of view you're asking.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
Monster.
there's a lot of these guys that change themselves. I mean, Firestorm, not human if you really give him.
Monster. Hothead.
Yeah. So
Gotta
you
go.
got a lot of. Now, the real monster, however, as we know, is Amanda.
Right.
Monster.
Okay.
Double monster.
Yeah.
Here,
and I think they cast pretty well.
No, they casted really. I didn't do anyone to cast or anything like this. So
yeah, no, there's no need to. They're doing
no
good.
need to.
I think they did a very good job.
100%.
They did a really good job of casting the for the cartoon, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that's all going to play out. But here's a couple of things I like to throw out there from really left field, and bear with me on my journey.
Let's go. Let's
all
go.
Right. So first of all, we're not doing any fan cast. The fan cast has been great. We all agree we like what we're seeing and looking forward to it, right? Keeping it all positive. So second of all, here's what I want to see. I want to see, are they going to, sleep within the genre of the first, timepiece of the Creature Commandos? Are we going to see, Monster Island, right? Like and that's it. And are they going to start mentioning, because it's taking place during World War II, and what I said earlier in the episode, are we going to start seeing more of the Nazis trying to get some occult items and see how those battlefields play out? Because I would like to see some of that come out. So that's part one. Now, obviously with Amanda Waller in it, this would be more present day.
Exactly. With Amanda Waller,
I don't think it can take place during World War II with Amanda there.
Yeah. Right. So exactly. So I know it can't. But here's the other part of it. Maybe the original Jake is going to remember something from the past, and it might kind of tie it in. But what I'd
you
love
have
to
the
see,
Frankenstein creature.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. But what I'd love to see, and I know this is a far stretch, and we've talked about some of these characters before. I want to see some Easter egg drop for a potential Janus Directive.
Interesting.
Right? Because, the Janus Directive was a whole, you always have your crossovers for every company, right, Rod? I'm not sure if you're aware of the Janus Directive. Are you aware of the Janus Directive?
No, I'm going to look for it right now.
Okay, so the Janus Directive was a crossover in DC for all their spy, black op covert teams or things that were going on. So this time it didn't really place with the Justice League and your independent heroes. It was anyone within that world. So it dealt with Checkmate, the original version of Checkmate, where they had the gold and black costumes. And Manhunter. So Mark Shaw Manhunter was a part of that. The Suicide Squad was a part of that. The Creature Commandos were a part of that. And it was all dealing with Amanda Waller because she's kind of crossing certain lines. And then someone started dropping information. So all the covert operation teams were having a shadow war amongst themselves. But it did have implications into the superhero war, and it was all collected. It was called the Janus Directive. So it did have crossover with a lot of the superhero books, one way or the other, and it did have its own individual book as a series, driving it as the backbone. So with Creature Commandos that are already in there, we know they're there. They're canon. Got it. James Gunn's got it. Peacemaker, because Peacemaker was a part of this too. So with Peacemaker, the Creature Commandos, the Suicide Squad, and Amanda Waller, we've got enough to start a Janus Directive and see, maybe drop some Easter eggs for a potential long-term storyline. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Because in this, let's just go through this real quick. I mean, you have Project Atom with Captain Atom and Major Force. Okay. You have the CBI, Sarge Steel and King Faraday.
Yep.
You have Checkmate, which includes Valentina Volstock, which means you have Negative Woman. You have the Force of July. And one day we'll go over those guys, I'm sure, one day.
Yes, please. Yeah, because I know them, but don't know enough about them.
Yeah. Well, I want to do both the Force of July, which is for the take for us for the 4th of July.
Okay.
And there's a Canadian group called the 5th of July.
Yes.
Because yours is the 1st, I believe, of July.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Canada Day. And then
put a pin in that. We will get back to it. Okay.
Yep. Then we have Peacemaker Project.
Yep.
We have Firestorm, Firehawk, and the Mark Shaw Manhunter.
Yeah.
And finally, the Suicide Squad.
Right.
All of this crossing over. I think it took them 3 months to do the whole thing because there were so many titles.
And forgive my memory, wasn't Cobra a part of this? And when I say Cobra, I'm not talking Cobra with a C, I'm talking Cobra with a K. So
yes, that's basically what starts it. Amanda Waller trying to murder. Well, Amanda Waller and the lead of Cobra trying to murder each other.
All right. And that's a book we got to cover too. So yes, there is a DC comic book out there for anyone watching or listening. It's called Cobra, but it's spelled with a K instead of a C. And it was a terrorist group. And this was before G.I. Joe was fighting Cobra Commander.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. And when I look at Cobra and I see Serpentor, I'm always like, huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, the costume's very similar.
There we go. So that's my thing of it. Regardless of where the Creature Commandos start, regardless of what Easter eggs we might see, I'm hoping that it will start to put something for the Janus Directive. And there's
an easy tie in there. Yeah.
A tie-in, a lead-up, because I think it would be interesting. I think to a certain degree, people, as much as we love the superhero, the traditional superhero, good versus evil, the audience have evolved. They now want to see more. And I'm not taking away, but they want to see more than Superman and Spider-Man and X-Men. They want to see, well, what happens living in the world? Do they get a little bit more grittier? And this would be a great gateway into something that people wouldn't expect, but I think would fully enjoy.
Yeah. And there's a good character that you can actually cross over from there. I don't know if they'll use him or not, but it's a very psychological monster to me, Shade the Changing Man.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, you see, we talked about Shade the Changing Man way back, and still, I like the original run, the Steve Ditko run, and I'm not trying to get off topic.
Yep.
And we have to revisit it for is it Neil Gaiman that did it?
Yeah, anytime. It was a great Vertigo time.
The Vertigo, right? So I read some of the Vertigo stuff, and we got to go back. We only did the beginning. I think but that's a different story for a different day. But Yes. So Shay the Changing Man, great crop. What I think it is right now is we've seen all the superhero stuff, we've seen the standard stuff. People want to see another layer under the heroes. And I think this is why, for example, for those who've watched it and no spoilers, those who've watched the Penguin are enjoying the Penguin.
That was good.
You know, right? Because we're getting another layer to the character, which adds to the world building. And we all know how I love world building. So getting back on target, I think that's what I would love to see. It's something to tie back the past where the Creature Commandos were supposed to be around in World War II. You know, it's present day because we have Amanda Waller with it. Okay, fine. But can we get, you know, instead of she being there as, okay, Amanda Waller just showing up, let's give her an overall purpose, and the subplot leads to the Janus Directive. And maybe it could lead a little bit more to Maxwell Lord going. It could bring in other characters that people wouldn't think, but I know they would enjoy because psychologically it's getting grittier and it's getting a little bit more grounded on certain aspects. And you're like, oh. Yeah. But that's my 2 cents on that, sir. You gentlemen, what do you think? What's your take on what you hope to see or maybe you want to see?
I definitely want to see, you know, I'm liking what I'm hearing in regards to having it the cartoon animated aspect of it. When I look over who's voicing and everything like that, I will say actually a good amount of people here can actually just act out the characters themselves. So I wouldn't even be taken back if they did like a one stunt off type of like we're doing a cartoon, we're doing an animated, whatever the case would be. Let it be one particular episode or a movie in between cartoon. Have a live one, and we go back to a cartoon for like a second season type of scenario. But basically having majority, or if not all, the voice actors play their actual character parts. Because I know it's going to be crazy in the budget to actually be able to show these in CG or however it's going to be done. Because you're not talking about one or two people. A lot of these characters are, you know, they got to go through some type of prosthetics and stuff like that. So there's going to be coin that's going to be required for that. So if anything, do the anime, build the momentum from that, build the fan base off of that. Do that for the season, then we're just going to do a live one, and then trickle it right back.
Yeah,
and I can say like
this is the way I see it. This is the way I see it. Frank Grillo, Sergeant as General Flag, don't have to relay anything, but put him in uniform.
Right.
David Harbour as Eric Frankenstein. David Harbour, I mean, he's already played Hellboy.
Hellboy. Yeah,
he's already played Hellboy.
That's
so dressing him up as Frankenstein is not a big deal. As a Frankenstein monster. I don't know the Sindira Varma very well, who's playing the bride. Let me take a look at her real quick.
Yeah, but I mean, at this point, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you look at them, like, you don't even have to, and there's no disrespect to known actors and unknown up and coming actors. You don't have to have a full cast of all known people.
Well, the only CGI you really have to do is Sean Gunn as G.I. Robot and the Weasel. He's already done the Weasel in Suicide Squad.
Right.
So they've got that. And Dr. Phosphorus, which you would basically, I would do that similar to what he did when he was on the Doom Patrol.
Yeah.
The way they did with him.
Right. Because I'm looking at the cast right now, and holy crap. Okay, so this is funny because, so for example, Alan Tudyk, who's on Resident Alien.
Love
right?
him.
They have him as Dr. Phosphorus. I was casting him as, for me, that was my pick for G.I. Robot.
I can see that.
Right? And all iterations of G.I. Robot. Be if he doesn't speak, you know, I was gonna have him be like the soldier, and then when he starts to speak, he would be the voice of G.I. Robot. So, and I had a whole thing. When you watch the episode, Larry, you'll see what I'm talking about. So that's what I'm going about. Frank Grillo, who's playing Rick Flag Sr. I mean, come on, he was Crossbones in the Captain America movies, so you can't go wrong. So, and James Gunn did this on purpose, saying that if he turns around and they have to do a live action appearance, he got actors that can do the voice work and could make a live action appearance. So he does have something planned for them to show up live. Yeah. So great casting. I want to see how they play out. So that was my only call out that I wanted to say, Rod, that James already thought about, hey,
Okay.
I know I'm starting off
I didn't
voice
get that
work
depth.
cartoon,
Got it.
but I plan on bringing them live, even if they're just background. So I know he's
That makes
trying
sense.
to steer the universe into probably another Justice League movie eventually. There's gonna be a crossover event, just how they did Avengers Endgame, and he's for once planting the seeds. And I'm glad that the higher ups are listening to him. So hopefully the success comes with it.
Yeah. The other thing that I could see with this is with possible flashbacks, they've worked with Sergeant Rock, which could lead into a Sergeant Rock series.
Oh my gosh, yes! Like, and here's the thing. So and it's gonna be a little surprise for me. I'm surprised that it didn't go further. So we had, was it last year or the year before, Werewolf by Night, right?
Yeah.
Came on Disney Plus. It was a one shot, beautiful black and white. It brought in a lot of the characters in that genre, that horror genre for Marvel.
Movie.
Right? Loved it. Like, absolutely. Well, the anticipation, the product did not take away from the anticipation that I had beforehand. Left me wanting more. I'm surprised that Marvel didn't follow it up with a Swamp Thing. Oh, sorry, a Man Thing.
Right.
Because they left it off that way and could have done a yearly, once in a while, like once a year for Halloween, continuing that.
100%.
With Creature Commandos, DC could take this and say, okay, this is coming out now. We are going to drop the Creature Commandos, direct to, whatever the streaming service is or in a theater, or whatever it is, on Halloween.
Well, go to Max.
Yeah.
Go to HBO Max.
Thank you. HBO Max. And it should come out, and it's perfect time if you think about it. If you drop this around Halloween, right? Because it goes into Halloween and it runs for a couple of weeks right into Remembrance Day, Veterans Day. Like, you know what I mean? Even if you do it as a quick 3-parter, like 3 episodes, 40 minutes each. Okay, you drop it on the 31st, and then boom, boom. It would hit so many levels that they're missing the marketing on this, and do it like once a year for a couple of stories, couple of missions.
Yeah. But at least there is one thing about Marvel is they are still planning a Midnight Suns.
Right. So they are planning a Midnight Suns. I love the game. But once again, I thought for sure you bring in Man Thing. Like, Man Thing was the big twist at the end. He was there, and you finally see him. You're like, yes, now what? And then Marvel walked away. And I'm like, no, you should have said, okay, we're going to do, we did Werewolf by Night. We should have done a Man Thing the following Halloween with a nice story. And I think Creature Commandos hits 2 worlds, not just one. It hits the horror, and it also hits the troops.
Right. Are doing also Bloodstone.
Yeah.
You can bring in, what's her name? Price, Vampire by Night.
Right. Yeah.
You've got the amphibian character. There's a lot of characters you can bring in. And you've got ties with Moon Knight and with the Black Knight.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think the Creature Commandos could have done the exact same thing. That should have been, DC should have sat there and went, oh, that's what you're doing? Okay, we got you. But we're going to take it a step further. And they have all the tools because it falls into the horror genre and it falls into the war comic genre. And if you look at dates, October 31st to November 11th, November 10th, November 11th.
Yeah.
You think of it once a week, they're not that far apart. That's like 3 weeks. That there is your marketing. How did you, right over your head?
Well, you gotta look at the genre. Look at the times that although you're doing Werewolf by Night, and from our perspective, it looking great. Look at Universal. The Universal tried to start their own little monster universe with the Mummy.
That could have worked. It could have worked.
It could have worked, but it just shows that as much as we think the clientele is ready for it to invest so much into it, it's just like it didn't seem to spark enough interest for them to continue. Because I thought the Mummy should have gone forward, just like you. I thought Werewolf by Night the Tom Cruise one, the Tom Cruise one, because that was definitely gearing towards the Universal monsters type of genre. So it was definitely something should have picked up, because that would have been perfect. That one.
But the problem with that is there was too much interference between Tom Cruise and the director.
Well, okay. Well, take that out from that. You don't have to bring him back again. You could have just he kind of rid himself out per se.
Yeah.
So, he's on search for something else. So we start looking on. You wanted to build up with the werewolf and Frankenstein. You could have went on that journey and start pulling up stories from there and circle back to Tom later on, and hopefully Tom and the director got themselves figured out. Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? Whatever happens.
And you already had Dr. Jekyll.
I'm sorry, but that's what I'm saying. They had Dr. Jekyll, so you had the opportunity to go somewhere. They were supposed to do like the Invisible Man. That was supposed to be, I think, the next one on the list. And we're stagnant.
So here's the thing. So for anyone watching and hearing this discussion right now, go back in our archives and look for the episode we did on what was it? Dark Worlds. No, the Dark Universe. Dark Universe. Because we covered all this in the Dark Universe. And this is what gets me is, did they come up with the other projects after? Because it went from studio to studio and they didn't connect it well. Great marketing from the get-go. We had Tom Cruise for The Mummy, right? You had, for the Mummy prospect, you had oh my gosh,
Russell Crowe for Dr. Jekyll.
Crowe. Yeah, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Like, okay, Johnny Depp was attached to the project to play the Invisible Man.
Yep. Yeah. Was it Angelina Jolie for The Bride?
I think so.
Yeah,
but I don't think she was in the promo picture. The promo picture had Javier. He was supposed to play the werewolf.
Javier Dolan.
Yeah, she was supposed to be the part of the Bride of Frankenstein. So this just shows. Yeah, she was supposed to be part of the initiative that were going that route.
And that there was ready. The Dark Universe, they promoted it, they had it. So it was all, and what I liked about that, what I said in that episode, if I remember correctly, was I liked the fact that they laid it out like a Marvel universe, right? Like a Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like, okay, here's the characters are going to play each and every person. All these movies are going to interact. We are laying the groundwork. We're going to do one by one by one, and it's going to lead to a big thing at the end. Okay, cool. All in. That means you did your world building. You know who it is, generally speaking. And because The Mummy, be it with Tom Cruise, the director, had some friction, be it didn't do the numbers they thought, people got it confused with the Brandon Fraser Mummy, saying, well, how's one the other? And it's like, no, this has got to be its own separate entity. So they started off strong, and then they should have continued, took over, and they did like the Invisible Man, and then they did these odd projects, but they didn't tie it all together. We had there was another one, I forget it. It's on a boat, where a vampire is on a boat. It's like the last voyage of, but all these are part of it.
The last voyage of the Demeter.
Thank you. Last voyage of me, exactly. And that one, they're all supposed to be in the same world. They're all part of the Dark Universe, but they don't advertise it enough as the Dark Universe. So the average person just thinks they're individual movies as opposed to all collective. So I'm still with the fact that Creature Commandos can hit two genres, literally one stone, two birds at the perfect time. Marketing was right there. They already got the cast. I think it can go, and I'd love to see hints of the Janus Directive, unless people want to see something different. But that's the hill I'm on. A
lot you can do. There's so much you can do with it.
Right?
Yeah. So, the only problem that I have is, in a lot of cases, reading DC and Marvel, they don't deal with magic very well. Their supernatural can be very limited.
No one's taking initiative to be brave to try something different. That's the problem. Like you're gonna do a one shot, and then if it doesn't get back to the numbers they want, or they're like, what? Listen, you got to take another step. At least do 3, 1, 2, 3, and after the three of them, if it doesn't work, then okay, well, fine, you made the attempt. But if you're gonna do it and you're not properly, like Barry said, they did the other ones per se. Like there was no connection to understand that they were actually in sequence, that it's part of the same universe. It just fell through. So all I would say is that with the Mummy, they could have went somewhere with that. So with Creature Commandos, they could definitely go somewhere with that. And that's what I'm saying, that I did not see or read beforehand that James Gunn was trying to mimic the idea or plant the idea of doing a cartoon and then going live. Because I thought I heard something about that. Or someone, I think maybe I was talking to someone, and that was like, when the movie was coming out, is it going to be alive or is it going to be animated? And then later on, I heard it was going to be cartoon. But this makes sense that at least if it came live, you can now you can now have a flesh-based creature hearing the story, or someone hears the story, someone in Gotham, someone in Metropolis hears something about what's going on, and in the war in Iraq or whatever the case may be, whatever war is going on, whatever the case may be, more actually reverse it. It'd be Batman, because Batman has the connection. He always has a tab. He has his pulse on Amanda. I know Amanda's doing Peacemaker. I'm just keeping my time. I'm just watching from afar. I know she's doing Suicide Squad. I've seen some of the craziness. I'm keeping away. Wait, Amanda's doing a Task Force M. What's that? What's that? Because Batman knows.
Yeah.
He knows all. He sees all.
Yeah.
So why not have that type of interaction where basically Batman now makes a kind of comment in Justice League in a future project or Batman project, whatever the case be, talking about, the typical Batman who will appear in Amanda Waller's house as she's coming out of the shower, hands her a towel. How the hell did you get in? Don't worry about it. Uh-huh. So I see you watching stuff. What are you doing over there? What do you mean?
And we know that Gunn's going to have Batman Brave and the Bold movie.
Yeah.
So,
right. But I'm just saying that. But I'm just saying the fact of having Batman have the opportunity, that is the connection to me. That is the connection point of having a live version in DCU interaction, and this is how we can get making it canon by having him face to face with Viola Davis, Amanda Waller. What is this I'm understanding? You got creatures. What the helping are you doing? I know there's supernatural stuff. You know me. I got connections. I know things. Amanda, what are you doing? Yeah. And that's a connecting thread right there.
Oh, and they can bring in other characters like Zatanna.
Yep.
On this, and this is where this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm saying. Bruce and I'll say, Batman say, I got connections. Yeah. What do you mean connections? Don't you worry about it.
Etrigan.
Listen, all you see is Etrigan. You see Zatanna. You see Constantine in the back of his mind, whatever the case would be. Listen, he has connection.
Yeah.
Don't play.
Yeah.
We have a Dark Division. We have, and then it goes into Dark League.
Yeah.
The Dark Justice League.
Yeah.
Aspect of it.
But here's what I'm hoping.
Connections here.
Here's what I personally am hoping. Let's just get there. What I'm hoping here is, now when the original group was there, you got very into their psychology, their personality, what's going on with them.
Yes.
All right. This is what's missing in the later comics.
Yes.
You get that with the Frankenstein character, but you don't get the other guys as much. Because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't last long, let's be honest. Okay? Now, you lost that in a lot of the later comics. When you got the one before the New 52, and then the New 52 one. All right. What I want to see in this series, in this cartoon, is give me that in-depth personal, like Smallville. An era. I want to, give me this, okay, I'm a monster, but I still have feelings. This is why I hate losing Lucky.
Because he was that.
For the real Frankenstein.
Soul of the team.
Quite a bit. Yeah. And, for the real Frankenstein creature, he's not as in-depth to me as Lucky.
No. Lucky. Yeah. No.
Yeah. And Warren trying to fight his ferociousness, his berserker. He doesn't want to be that. He's a farm boy.
Yeah.
Right. And Velcro's a lot like Wolverine. He's got his own code.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He stole. Okay. He was going to get court-martialed and get 30 years. But when Shreve kills someone, I think he killed some kids, as a matter of fact, that sends Velcro off. And you really don't want a vampire pissed at you. Let me see that depth.
Not a smart move.
Let me see that depth. This is what I'm hoping Gunn will bring.
And that's exactly what I would say, because if it brings that depth, I mean, even up to right now, Superman and Lois right now on CW, the writing I think is phenomenal with the budget cuts they have. The writing has really stepped up to balance it out, and that's amazing. Yeah. So I want to see that with Creature Commandos. I want to connect with them. I want to see that psychological, emotional attachment to these characters. I don't want them to be
realism
just, like,
type of stories. Realism type of stories.
I don't want to be
That's all
fluff.
it
I
is.
don't want to be fluff and surface. Oh man, I'm a robot. Oh geez, I'm a vampire and I don't like being a vampire. No, I don't want that. I want to really get into the depth of the character. So I think that's important. That there will sell this a lot more. And of course, to your point, Larry, you're right. They don't do magic as well as they should do with some of the heavy hitters they have in there. So bringing in like someone like Constantine, and I'm talking, Constantine, like the CW series, or was it CW? What the first one? This first
DC, and then he moved to CW with Legends.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. But his own run, I watched that first season that they had. Well, it's only one season he had of Constantine, right? And I enjoyed it. And then they gave so many Easter eggs, especially that last episode. You see the helmet of fate that is sitting there in his house, and I'm like, ah! And then it's like, okay, we're not gonna get Dr. Fate. So we need to step up how they do the magic. I don't know if they don't do magic properly because people can't envision how it's supposed to be done, or it's always budget constraints.
I don't know, but here's my thing is, even in the comics.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve Ditko on Doctor Strange.
Okay.
That was that pulled you in. Okay?
Yeah.
The guys who did Dr. Fate in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
It pulled you in. In somewhere in the mid 70s, they stopped being that interesting.
Yeah.
And I can't really say why. Was they lost the philosophy? Was it they lost the extra dimensional, interesting art? What was it? But you don't see it anymore. Constantine's good just because he's a bastard.
True.
And does what he has to do.
Yeah.
You don't see all that much special effects with him.
No.
But when you do,
it's supposed to be really there over the top. Exactly.
Yeah. So, I don't know. But this is what I'm hoping. We're going to get good, in-depth stories about their psychology, their heart.
Yeah.
Not just, I'm a monster and I'm going to go out and fight.
No. And I'm really hoping that, James has got the writing and it's going to come across. I mean, his mind, hopefully it connects that way. So we'll see. So,
which he did well in Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
that's a hope. But that's it. So look, man, it brings us to the end of this episode, which is always interesting. I think, if anyone, remember, like, subscribe, and share, put your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Are we on the right path? Is that what you want to see? Or you want to see something else? Or maybe you didn't think about it. Do you even know who the Creature Commandos are? If not, then hopefully this was a great jumping on point for you. And we gave you some reading material that you can go back and at your local comic book store and find, on this. Rod, any last words on this IP before we move on?
Listen, it's a very interesting one. And you know what? I like that we keep bringing some interesting characters and great interesting IPs, to discuss and talk about. Listen, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and make sure anything you like to hear from us, make sure you put in the comments below. Let us know what you felt about it. Creature Commandos, you know what was a great aspect of what you heard? What did you like? Let's have a discussion about it. Let's have some fun with that. And listen, make sure you hit that follow button. Don't keep it a secret. If you like what you saw, you like what you heard, let somebody else know. Yep. Let's go.
Yep. And
perfect.
Not only support you to a local comic store, because I'm going to be honest with you, if you can't afford to go out and pick up these back issues and so on, DC, Unlimited, you can read the original stories.
Okay.
But if you can, always support your local store.
Wise words from the sage Larry. All right, perfect. As we said, support. One way or the other, be it a click, be it a support, and joining a book, and letting us know. So on behalf of myself, Rod, and Larry, thank you everyone for tuning in to the iConis podcast, where the icon is the Creature Commandos. And remember, this whole world literally was started by a pencil, a piece of paper, and lots of imagination. Keep on dreaming. Love the bad, Larry. And we're out. For your service, everyone.
All right. I love you guys.